Bonsoir. Bien, bonsoir. En ce vendredi 9 juin 2023 pour la deuxième soirée React Summer Game Fest. Voilà, pour le Tribeca Games Showcase. Donc j'ai très hâte. J'espère que ce sera mieux que hier, parce qu'hier c'était l'ennui absolu. Hein. J'avais réussi à résumer la soirée en faisant un magnifique row. D'ailleurs, donc ouais, c'était assez décevant. Donc j'espère que ce soir il y aura du mieux. Pour ceci, voilou, j'ai pas grand chose à dire. En fait, j'attends juste que ça commence. J'ai l'impression qu'ils ont du retard, ce qui est un peu fâcheux. On va être honnête, c'est fâcheux que ça ait du retard. Je vais pas mettre de lumière cette fois-ci parce que il fait beaucoup trop chaud pour mettre quelconque lumière. Et puis de toute façon, je vais enlever le background au moment où on passera à l'autre cam. Bref, donc là c'est des ah non, là c'est des vrais directs. Non, je sais pas si c'est direct qui est écrit planifié. Ouais, mais c'est du direct, hein, c'est du live. Hein. Un live qui est planifié. Bref. Ah, alors peut-être. Peut-être. C'est un peu long là. Hein. Et tant que ça commence là. Sinon je vais gueuler. Hein. Je vais être chafouin. Hein. Je vais être chafouin si ça a du retard. Hein. C'est moi qui vous le dis. Hein. Je vais être chafouin parce que moi j'ai tout fait pour être à l'heure. Voilà. Avec un minimum de respect. Ah non, plus sérieusement, la soirée d'hier. Surtout l'annonce de fin quoi. C'était du gros banger l'annonce de fin. Hein. C'était waouh quoi. Final Fantasy VII Remake, enfin non, Rebirth. Franchement, quoi, c'est incroyable, quoi. La grosse annonce de fin, quoi. Fallait pas la manquer, quoi. C'est ce que disait Geoff, là. Je sais jamais comment on dit son nom. Fallait vraiment pas la manquer, cette annonce de fin. Walou, quoi. J'étais très désappointé hier. Donc voilà. Bon, apparemment, il y en a qui disent que sur Twitch ça fonctionne, pas sur YouTube. Je vais aller vérifier ça sur Twitch. Du coup, voir s'il y a bien un direct. Mais oui, je les avais vus en direct. Ah oui, mais là, c'est le spotlight. Je me demande si ça a vraiment commencé. Hein. « 9 juin à 20h45, c'est bizarre. Ah, ils sont passés en non répertorié. Donc je pense que c'est un autre lien. Oui, c'est un autre lien, ils sont en direct. Ah, ils cassent les couilles. Ils sont en direct depuis quand? Ah oui, bah ouais, on a un petit retard, ok. Il y a déjà le premier jeu en fait qui est passé. Autant pour moi. Et bah let's go, on va tout de suite y passer.
Inkle is an independent game studio based in the UK, and we specialise in narrative games, so we make games in all sorts of genres, but our main focus is on games that tell really strong stories.
2 secondes. Voilà.
Our most famous game is probably 80 Days, an adaptation of Jules Verne's classic novel.
The main hook of 80 Days is that you can go around the world any way you like. The way that Highland Song works is extremely similar to 80 Days. You start in one particular point and you can choose all sorts of different routes through the Highlands in order to reach your goal. But it also ends at a single point because you're trying to reach the lighthouse where your Uncle Hamish lives by the sea.
Finding the right gameplay for a game like a Highland Song can be really difficult. Gameplay is usually built around loops and patterns. Good narratives aren't made out of loops. We want to make sure that the character isn't doing anything just for the sake of gameplay, but Everything the character's doing has to make sense within the narrative.
C'est à cause de ma barre en bas.
So the reason that we've essentially created our very first platforming game is that it just makes sense for the character within this scenario to be jumping and scrambling over rocks. And it even has a rhythm action mechanic. So in many ways, it's the most gamey game that we've ever created.
Moira's platforming abilities in a Highland Song are quite realistic. She has a limited amount of time that she can climb.
Là, c'est bon, là, c'est de la précision qu'on veut. Voilà.
She gets hurt if she falls
Bref,
too
du coup,
far.
ça ne bouge plus.
She can rest to recover
okay.
her strength.
Bon, c'est pas parfait, hein, le truc là. Je vois qu'au niveau de mes cheveux, ça galère un peu.
And affected by cold. A lot of our mechanics are built around the tension between knowing where you are and being lost. We have a map mechanic, which is all about that. It's about
mais
finding
c'est déjà
little
mieux que
pockets
rien,
of
puis comme ça
knowledge,
m'évite d'avoir un
learning
fond
the
vert,
names,
parce que franchement, j'en aurais jamais l'utilité d'un fond vert. Donc voilà. Voilà, on est du coup sur les petits jeux indés. Voilà, un jeu à histoire. C'est pour ça que je préfère le Tribeca. Parce que voilà, c'est moins gros jeu à gameplay et tout, c'est plus petits jeux indés. Mais généralement, les petits jeux indés, bah. Voilà quoi, ils sont portés sur un scénario, sur une vraie histoire. Et donc, bah, moi, je préfère ça. J'espère juste que le ventilo s'entend pas beaucoup, parce que... Je suis obligé de le mettre parce qu'il fait trop chaud, il fait combien? 27. Un peu chaud.
And we got lost and we had to stumble through rivers and bogs. It was really quite a chilling, scary experience. My parents are art historians, and there was always one painting in particular that they had that I used to love as a child. It had a little ruined castle by a loch and these Scots pine trees and this golden brown colour palette that was just so characteristic of the region. And so going for a really painterly aesthetic was a way to capture that. The more modern take on that is the digital paintings of concept artists such as Paul Scott Canavan, who we worked with on this project. And he came up with this really beautiful way of hand painting rocks and trees and grass.
Putain,
and then assembling them as a huge collage, but then all built up so that the overall effect is of a painting coming to life.
Donc si je comprends bien, ils ont utilisé des vraies peintures pour faire les décors, les paysages, et par-dessus, en fait, ils ont rajouté, du coup, le personnage. C'est hyper bien. Pourquoi est-ce que les gros jeux à budget, j'ai l'impression qu'il n'y a pas de recherche, ils se ressemblent tous, et les jeux indés, il y a de la recherche, quoi. C'est fou. C'est fou, après, de perdre cette envie de recherche. C'est incroyable. Là, moi, j'ai envie d'acheter un jeu comme ça. Franchement, c'est trop bien. Il y a de la recherche, il y a une histoire, il y a une profondeur, il y a un truc, quoi. Non, c'est très très bon ça.
As the way it looks and feels popped into my head, and I can't be prouder of what we've created.
Highland Song. Et bah franchement, c'est celui-là que j'attends.
Co-op is a game studio that's based originally in Montreal,
non mais là il va y avoir que des bangers là ce soir.
Worldwide. It is a cooperative.
Basically that means that we make all major decisions together. We decide whether we want to work 4 days or 5 days. Spoiler alert, we decided to do 4 days a long time ago.
We present concepts when we are starting to put together things, and we all vote on what we think is what everybody would like to work on.
And you feel more attached to what you're making because you voted for it, you chose it.
It was really important for us to feel like this was a different space where people actually could be the voices behind the games that we make.
We are the makers of some charming, fun games like Winding Worlds and Nog and the upcoming Goodbye Volcano High.
Goodbye Volcano High is a cinematic visual novel about dinosaurs in their final year of high school. At the start of the year, they find out that a meteor is coming. And the game is about asking yourself, what would you do if you had 1 year left? Who would you be? Who would you want to love? And how would you want to go out?
I vote yes.
I don't think this is a voting type situation.
I mean, it does kind of belong to all of us. Or it was supposed to.
It does. You did a great job.
So, what do you say, Fang?
We chose dinosaurs for Goodbye Volcano High for a couple of reasons.
Originally, when we presented the game to everybody else, it was meant to be a dating sim because, like, at the time, this was kind of like the hot thing to work on was dating sims. And then we were like, hold up. Here's the hook. It's a dating sim with dinosaurs at the end of the world. As soon as you start talking about a meteor, even though the characters are unsure what's going to happen, you know what's going to happen.
And that was really important to us because we wanted to make something that could tap into the anxiety of our current times. And dinosaurs was a really great way to create that metaphor instantly.
As it went on and we became kind of more ambitious and more interested in making what we actually like, we were like, what if it's an anime and we tell a story that isn't necessarily so focused on dating, but really goes deep into the emotional aspects of the end of the world.
So high school already feels like it's the end of the world to most people, so it wasn't really that hard to hone in on the teen angst. It's really the hope that's tricky to encapsulate.
High school to me is all about that sweet, sweet balance of doom and hope.
Hope for the better future, hope for the dreams we chase and the ambitions we strive for. Those are things that can feel impossible to cling to, especially with something that can't be stopped and feels inevitable, like a giant meteor hitting you.
And communities all across the continent reacted to the news of a previously unknown space object this morning.
So, how do you deal with that?
It starts off very joking. They're kind of making gallows humor jokes.
In light of the whole space rock potential demise of civilization thing, my chosen theme feels off.
What's the theme?
Using this year to, make an impact.
Our characters all have different methods of coping. Some double down on their ambitions, determined to accomplish their dreams before it's too late. Others slow down and decide to savor what time they have left, regardless of what their dreams are.
We can still win! Battle of the Bands! Asteroid or not!
The player character essentially ends up being the UI, and you end up playing as Fang's inner monologue.
I think this means she's rooting for us?
Music is really important in Goodbye Volcano High, and I would actually say music is really important to our studio and all of our games. It's core to our DNA, and music is central to the identity of the people who make the game, and so it is central to the identity of the game itself and the characters within it.
There's no performance in this game that is separate from the narrative. It is essentially the same as having a scene of dialogue, but you're playing music.
We never climbed, we never fell. We scaled our way out of this water well.
Voilà, vache!
Is kind of gearing up
ça va être chaud là quand même.
As a musician. And then realizing that they may not.
J'espère que c'était le niveau de difficulté max.
So those two things are kind of clashing in their brain for the music they're creating and singing in the game.
Putain, le téléphone a l'air énorme.
I think every person hopes that they get to be near people they love and who understand them and that love them. Those are things people can grasp no matter how much time they have left.
I think that this game really encourages people to be brave, to do the brave thing, and love each other and be there for each other, even when it's scary, even when you don't know what's going to happen.
Ça me fait penser en fait à Life is Strange. Et moi, tout ce qui est type jeu narratif à choix comme ça, bah c'est ma cam, hein. C'est ma giga cam. Focus Entertainment. Donc, j'ai pas trop parlé pendant Good Boy Volcanoï parce que ça fait genre vraiment au moins 1 an, 2 ans que vraiment j'attends des nouvelles et je veux en savoir un peu plus.
Bonjour, je suis Thomas.
Oh, des Français.
Nous sommes le fondateur de Rundisk et nous sommes ici pour vous parler de Chants of Scénar.
Avec Chants of Scénar, nous avons voulu proposer une aventure originale basée sur le mythe de Babel.
On a essayé de vous plonger dans la peau d'un voyageur qui débarquerait dans un pays complètement inconnu.
Tout au long de son ascension, le joueur va rencontrer 5 peuples différents. Chaque peuple a ses propres coutumes, sa propre histoire et évidemment sa propre langue.
Comme chacun de ces peuples parle des langues différentes, ça fait des siècles qu'ils ne se comprennent plus. Une partie du jeu et de l'aventure va consister à comprendre les raisons de cette division et peut-être essayer de rétablir l'harmonie dans la tour. Quand on a compris qu'on voulait travailler sur les langues, on a eu cette idée de s'inspirer de la tour de Babel, parce que c'est un mythe qui est très puissant, qui parle des hommes qui essayaient d'atteindre le ciel en construisant une gigantesque tour. Et ça a déplu aux dieux qui ont décidé de les frapper d'une malédiction, en leur faisant tous parler une langue différente.
Oui, c'est vrai.
Ce qui est important et original dans le jeu, c'est que les langues sont des puzzles en soi. Pour nous, un mot c'est pareil qu'un levier, une porte, une clé. On comprend des langues en résolvant des puzzles, et résoudre des puzzles nous permet de comprendre des langues.
Ok.
Chants of Scénar est avant tout un jeu d'aventure. Au-delà de l'aspect puzzle, le joueur devra explorer l'environnement, interagir avec différents personnages et participer à des scènes d'action et d'infiltration.
Bon, je suppose que ça va être dans une page Steam, on pourra retrouver tous les jeux.
Plus un traducteur.
Réduction jusqu'à moins que 80% sur tout Dontnod. Ça peut être intéressant, surtout qu'ils ont sorti un nouveau jeu. Il n'y a que 10% de réduction, mais faudrait que je regarde ça de plus près. Remember Me.
C'est important pour nous de montrer ça, puisque quelque part, ce qu'on essaie de montrer dans le jeu, ce qu'on essaie en tout cas de dire dans le jeu, c'est que la violence n'est pas forcément le moyen de tout résoudre. Les inspirations artistiques du jeu, elles se trouvent principalement dans la bande dessinée européenne des années 70-80, puis plus tard, on a élargi les inspirations du jeu. On a convoqué le brutalisme, l'architecture mauresque, l'architecture indienne, et c'est ce qui nous a permis de créer ce monde un peu pluriel.
Chants of Scénar est une invitation au voyage, à la tolérance et à l'ouverture sur les autres.
D'ordinaire, les langues étrangères sont vues comme un frein. C'est d'ailleurs pour ça qu'on parle de barrière de la langue. Mais dans Chants of Scénar, ce contexte est voué à être dépassé, puisque les langues y sont à la fois l'obstacle et la solution. On espère que vous aurez du plaisir à découvrir la tour, à résoudre ses mystères et à nous aider à réunifier ces peuples.
Et évidemment, nous avons hâte d'avoir vos retours.
Chants of Scénar. Avec le CNC, bah putain. C'est du bing, c'est du bing.
Nightscape is a 2.5D atmospheric adventure game where the ancient Arabian night sky loses its light.
Ah par contre, je regarde, il y a des réductions sur les jeux Dontnod et Masterclass, ils mettent Life is Strange en réduc de fou, mais c'est pas la version remaster. Aïe.
A key stellar cast member is the Goat Kid constellation. The Goat Kid decides to accompany Layla in her journey.
These days, people do not know much about constellations and the stories behind them, especially Arabic constellations.
They're different from the Western or the Greek constellations. And so we've had a big research task finding out what those constellations mean, what the backstories are.
C'est fou parce que là je suis sur le truc du Tribeca et j'ai quasiment tous les jeux en liste de souhait. J'ai plus de la moitié des jeux en liste de souhait. C'est dingue.
Having Layla use the constellation's abilities to solve puzzles and help with Layla in defeating enemies.
The game being 2.5D, you can actually walk into the screen. There's a lot there that allow them to make the game very cinematic.
This is a brand new experience for me, building a team from the ground up. We found an amazing level designer in Nabil and a coder in Idris. And very recently we found our technical artist in Zaki, and those three are the powerhouse of the studio. And I think it's really genuinely amazing that we found those guys who are willing to work with us in Doha. I was very unsure about the amount of talent for making video games in the Middle East. And I think we got super lucky finding the team that we did.
For me, it all starts with a story and pictures that triggers my imagination. It triggered immediately some music in my mind. Beautiful Middle Eastern melodies to take them in, the maqams, to combine them with harmonies, Western influences as well, that it comes together as a blend.
In my mind, designing sound is a bit like playing with clay, like trying to model this clay, this sound, manipulate, edit, cut. For example, the hook shot is mostly made by a tree branch, the footstep of a scorpion walking, which is a mix of knife and stone. The voice of a scorpion is my voice, actually. And then overly processed. When the scorpion attack, when the scorpion die, attack, that's my voice.
Il est français ou quoi?
We're trying really hard to make the game feel magical. Particularly the parts where the player is trying to figure out the puzzles.
Being in a country like the Philippines where my hometown had about zero pollution, so looking at the stars was one of my hobbies, which is why Nightscape appealed to me a lot.
There's about 65 million people in the MENA region who play games, and there's a very, very sparse amount of content being developed from within. We want to push that boundary, and we want to create fun and meaningful games with the Middle East in mind, utilizing its culture and rich traditions and history to really inspire ideas for games going forward. And ultimately build a bridge towards understanding the Middle East better.
Nightscape. Pas confondre avec Mindscape. Petite blague. Tu manges pas de pain. Et là pour l'instant, je suis relativement convaincu. Straight Gods.
Everything I set upon unravels at my feet. Everything I've learned wasted.
Tu m'avais déjà entendu parler.
Doesn't know how to be free.
The games industry is always absolutely convinced that
convaincu par tous
we
les
can only be
journalistes.
this and this only until someone comes along and proves them wrong.
Stray Gods is a role-playing musical where you control the song. You play as Grace, a college dropout who's not quite sure what to do with her life.
A woman living in the modern world who encounters the last of the Greek muses.
Calliope?
Who dies in her arms, passes on her powers, and Grace discovers that the Greek gods are alive and well and hidden in the modern world.
We think that Stray Gods kind of appeals beyond just fans of video games. It's a really unique story and a unique experience.
There are so many elements that go into this game to make it special that you can attach to any one of them and have an incredible experience.
Stray Gods is what we call a role-playing musical. It's not really a genre that's ever existed before.
You say you didn't kill Calliope. You have 1 week to prove it. What do I do?
Start singing.
This is a game with branching musical numbers where the key decisions in the story are made in musical numbers that change depending on your choices.
Lost girls, lost girls.
The way that we tackle music is one that people have never seen before. Boarding multiple branching paths that should link up to each other. There's a lot of considerations to factor in. It's very complicated, but it feels very worth it in the end.
Et pourquoi est-ce qu'il n'y a que les jeux indés qui sont bien? Pourquoi est-ce qu'hier, les jeux qui étaient censés être triple A, c'était de la pure... et de la pure merde?
Broadway, like, what more could you ask for, really?
Being able to work with some champions like Austin Wintory, David Gator, Troy Baker has been nuts.
At the end of the day, it
Troy
came
Baker,
down to our composer, Austin. He works some kind of dark magic and you get it all back and you're like, don't know how you transformed that take into this, but it's absolutely amazing.
You'll have to see. You'll have to see.
We have such incredibly complex, thoughtful characters in this game. Every single character in the game has the potential to be a favorite.
My favorite character is Eros.
I really love Aphrodite. I think she is beautiful.
Oh, no, that's too hard of a question.
My favorite character is, I think, Orpheus.
My king, Orpheus. He's my favorite. It used to be Hermes, but Orpheus, emo king, love.
Look at me, who do you think I am? I'm saying Medusa. I am the #1 Medusa fan in the office.
I love Medusa, and I love Persephone, and I adore Freddie. But my favorite.
I reckon my favorite character is Freddy.
I'm really gonna go against the grain here. My favorite character is Freddy.
Everybody's gonna say Freddy, so I thought I'd say someone else as well.
But my favorite. Oh, yeah, I'll say Freddy. But Medusa and Calliope and Persephone. Like, it's really hard. Sorry.
There is a level of belief in the studio in the themes in this game and the stories that it's trying to tell and the people it's trying to involve and the people it's trying to talk to that I haven't seen on a lot of the games that I've worked on in my career.
We've assembled this superstar group of people. It is a Voltron of game development.
Early on, Liam made a conscious effort to make sure that everyone that we hired culturally fit, but also had a conscious effort to make sure that we weren't hiring the same kind of people.
Every single person who came onto this project brought something wholly and uniquely theirs.
It's one thing to be able to hire to have diverse voices. It's also another thing to make sure that those voices are heard. It's just important for us that everyone, one, feels safe enough to share their opinion, and two, diverse enough that many opinions are shared from all sorts of walks of life.
At the end of the day, gaming is about joy, and I really like being reminded that making games can also be about joy.
Eh ben, le rôle à Bailey de Tribeca.
Very soon,
C'est une dinguerie ce cast.
the idols will be no more. Lost in a moment.
3 août. Ah bah c'est genre bientôt quoi. Oh bah, allez. Continuons dans les bons jeux. Telltale Games, The Expanse. Ça fait un moment qu'ils en parlent en plus. Donc ça peut être que bien. Hein.
The Expanse is an exceptional intellectual property in that it's huge.
C'est avec
and that the
Deck 9,
characters
voilà.
are the forefront of what they are focusing on.
What is so compelling about it is that it works in several different mediums, right? I mean,
Ouais, parce que j'ai un peu l'air transparent.
And then I think what was so special about the television show was that it was almost like just another window
Parce que
of
j'ai pas assez de
looking
lumière.
at the same story.
So what's unique about the way that we tell stories is
Well,
that we give our
peut-être
players
à travers moi,
agency over the
petit
character
dos.
they're playing, which basically means that their choices shape the overall story, so they're actually living in the story as opposed to just following along with it.
When you're adapting a television property into a video game property, you have to think about what the fan is expecting and when they're coming into. This takes place years before the first
de base,
season.
c'était un
We're getting
film
to
ou une
see
série
the
télé.
world through Kamina Drummer's eyes.
Je sais pas du tout.
She is a belter, somebody who's out in deep space and has grown up there, has never set foot on a planet, so her perspective is really different.
It's hard for me to look at these moons without thinking about the other research colonies exploiting all the resources on them and giving nothing to the belt.
I hoped to portray her, especially at the beginning of the video game, as a little bit more vulnerable and open, and just see the events that cause her to harden.
Just like Ceres. Bossing everyone around, only this time no dolls to keep you on the leash, yeah?
Pouah.
A really awesome character like Drummer deserves to have
Pas dans
really
ta
interesting
gueule.
situations to be put
Voilà.
in that fans have come to expect from the show, and now it's like they're getting to play an episode of The Expanse, but in video game form.
Ouais, bah
We
pareil,
can
il a
do
l'air trop
things
bien ce
like
jeu.
put zero G in the game.
Alors je vais pas
We have to
pouvoir
think
tout mettre dans
about
ma
it
liste
from
de souhaits
what's a
quoi.
good,
Il y a déjà 109
interaction
jeux dans ma liste de souhaits.
and changing
J'en peux plus parce que
that
j'essaie d'en
from what
enlever
you may have
certains.
seen in the show slightly to make sure that
En fait, il y a des
it's
jeux qui ont l'air bien, mais je sais pas, je les avais très jamais. En fait, j'achète très peu de jeux. J'achète les soldes et j'en achète le plus possible. Je mets genre 20 balles. 20 à 50 euros, ça dépend si vraiment il y a des gros coups de cœur. Mais c'est vrai que j'évite de mettre trop d'argent.
Is this the answer I wanted to choose, or do I want to choose this answer? And that they both have their upsides and their downsides. And so The Expanse is perfect for that.
Drummer, his suit is punctured and losing pressure. You need to release the vault and patch him now or he could die.
On me voit plus.
Belay that. That vault has O2, fuel, armaments. We can't afford to lose it.
It was a really interesting challenge to come at the same character in a completely different medium.
Deck 9 is a video game studio. We are known for our narrative, our characters, and our motion capture technology.
It's a completely blank white room. You've got some tape on the floor, maybe a few things made out of wire to show where a door frame might be or something like that, but otherwise it's pure imagination.
I assume you didn't
Ça a
come
l'air
to
bien
talk
ça,
about
putain.
crystals.
We have a new target.
What is it this time? El Dorado? The Fountain of Youth? Let me guess. The Falcon Horde of Venus?
The UNN Urshanabi. Cap believes there's something valuable on board.
Something that we are really excited for people to experience in the Expanse of Telltale series is the emotional performance that we're getting from our actors that comes through with our technology and from our animators that really bring out the personality in these characters.
I work for you, but you don't own me.
Believe me, I'm well aware.
Just want to make sure you're not having second thoughts about our deal.
Oh, come on. We're equal partners. We pay the crew, the costs, and the overhead.
The rest is 50-50. You and me.
Pas mal les répétitions zoom là.
A job like this is that I get to play.
On sent que c'était encore le Covid. Hein.
We're hoping that you form these bonds with these characters and that they are something that you carry with you after you're done playing the game and you're thinking about.
Mais c'est vrai que c'est cool parce que j'ai l'impression vraiment que ça y est, la période Covid est passée. Et du coup, ça y est, vraiment, l'industrie du jeu vidéo reprend son cours et je pense qu'on est amené à revoir des gros trucs et tout parce que c'est vrai que là, on a eu un trou. En 2020, bon, il y a eu tous les gros jeux, mais bon, c'est parce qu'ils avaient été faits depuis 2018, 2019, voire avant. Mais c'est vrai que 2021, 2022, c'était compliqué, surtout en termes de jeux indépendants, j'ai trouvé. Il y avait eu beaucoup moins de jeux qui m'avaient attiré. Mais là, pour l'instant, c'est un sans faute. Enfin, en tout cas, ils me parlent tous, en tout cas, et je trouve qu'il y a vraiment quelque chose que vous n'aurez pas compris. Les développeurs, hein, ça se voit en fond, il y a des lignes de code.
Everybody was incredibly excited about this moment, and you see it through the eyes of an 8-year-old kid kicking a ball around with your friends in the park.
¿Vamos a jugar?
Je pense qu'il l'a fait
When I
tout
was
seul.
growing up, I played a lot of soccer. In Ecuador, the culture of soccer is very big, and if you're a boy and you're not playing soccer, it's like hard to make friends. A lot of like my best friends I made were through playing soccer. But then when I moved to the US, I wasn't really watching or playing soccer for a few years. That sort of made me like take a step back from it. I sort of like realized this and I was like, oh, like, this has such a big role in my life. I wanted to make this game to sort of like figure out what it was that was really interesting about soccer growing up. When I started making the game, the first thing I focused on was this like relationship with the ball and like making the ball like this physical object that you're kicking around. More than like creating like a soccer match, I knew that I wanted to just like your relationship with the ball and like how that sort of then relates to your environment. Immediately was thinking, okay, what should it look like? And there was this artist and musician, Sebastián. I really liked his work.
My name is Sebastián Balbuena and I am in charge of the art in Despelote. That includes 2D animation, 3D modeling and also the music. This is actually the first video game I have ever worked in.
I knew the game was going to be in 3D because I wanted the game to be like feel very physical and this like the physical connection with the ball.
We wanted to find a graphic style that could communicate emotions, and we found that the 2D hand-drawn animation was the best way to do that.
We developed like the art style sort of around like his previous work, and his style sort of feels very nostalgic to us to have these like backgrounds with this like very grainy aesthetic. That was just very important to have that dynamic. The background being so noisy, the characters being so like hand-drawn and like so clean. As soon as like I was like, okay, well, what's the setting for this game? Like, the only really idea I had was like where I have played soccer in my life, which is in Quito. That's where the game sort of had to be set. It became really important for us to like capture Quito in a way that was like very true to us. So we're using a lot of pictures, and the buildings are all real buildings.
Some of the voices are from people that we knew. We wanted to have the same feeling that you get when you listen to people's conversation in the street. So that's why we went with the improvisation for the dialogue.
It's all improvised, really. We like approached a lot of friends and family in Ecuador. The parents are played by my own parents, so there's an interesting dynamic happening there
la famille, c'est des barres, ça.
as a kid. The scene we said is it's 2001. Ecuador is just coming out of this big economic crisis, and there's this idea we can qualify to the World Cup, and that's like really exciting. And it's been great because I think it's bringing in a lot of this like sort of communal
Attention,
understanding.
l'ingé son s'endort. Hein.
So my parents aren't really big soccer people, but the excitement of qualifying to the World Cup was so big that even they were really excited about it.
Oiga, ya está jugando el Ecuador, vamos a ver. Todo el mundo está hablando de que este sí hay chance.
Capturing this moment in time was important because I think for my generation, the first time we qualified to the World Cup, it sort of meant like, oh, Ecuador is a tiny little country, but all of a sudden we were like in the world stage and we were like playing against Italy and like we were like in the big newspapers, and that felt like a really big thing. Pelota in Spanish means ball, and despelote is sort of a saying that people have. Is like, esto está hecho un despelote, is like, this is a mess. So it's sort of like a play on words, like ball and like mess. We're growing up with this idea of si se puede, which is what the people chant to the soccer team, which means, yeah, we can do it. Si se puede and si se pudo, like we can do it and we already did it. Like that's not something my parents were able to like grow up with. People like grasp onto it so much, and I think it like really gave a lot of people so much hope. And I think for me, like that being like one of my earliest memories, it sort of made me grow up thinking like, oh yeah, like, yes, we can. I hope that people really enjoy just running around in Quito. I think we've built it in a way that is based on a lot of our memories. Instead of like trying to recreate it directly one-to-one, it's more of like a fuzzy memory. And I hope that feels very like transportive for people, and they can experience what this moment in time in Ecuador was, and how I felt through that time.
Ouais, bah pourquoi pas, franchement, c'est pas si mal. Quoi? C'est fini? Déjà, ça n'a même pas duré 1 heure. Ça n'a même pas duré 1 heure. Elisabeth Olsen? Bah franchement, on va dire les termes. On va dire les termes, on va dire les putains de termes. J'ai été plus convaincu en 35 minutes quand hier 2 heures de show. 2 heures. C'était une torture. Une torture ces 2 heures de show. Et plus jamais. C'était très bon. Moi, j'ai été convaincu par toutes les annonces quasiment. Bon, du coup, ceci étant dit, ça nous a bien laissé une bonne heure. Enfin, ça nous laisse une bonne heure et demie pour jouer à Far Cry 5. Et ouais, du coup, je m'attendais à ce que ce soit un peu moins court. Il n'y a pas d'autres festoches après, il n'y a rien d'autre. Voyons voir Summer Game Fest. Je vérifie, hop, je remets un fond, voilà. Le Tribeca. Et non, la prochaine conférence c'est demain. Demain. Je sais pas si je la regarderai, c'est le Wholesome Direct. Ça m'inspire pas trop, c'est le OTK. Mais surtout moi ce qui m'intéresse c'est le Future Game Show. C'est le Future Game Show. C'est quand ça? Fais chier, putain, je pourrais pas être là. C'est de 19h à 20h. Oh, fais chier, putain, je serai pas là. Ah, fais chier. Ah, ça m'énerve. Je serai pas là. Et ouais. Attends, 3 PM. Que là, c'est 1 PM. C'est de 19h à 20h. Je serai là qu'à 19h30. Même pas. Oh, fait chier. Et bah tant pis. Pas de conf demain du coup. Pas de conf demain. Bah tant pis, hein. Au pire je ferai un stream, je la regarderai vite fait, comme ça en spotlight, rapidement. Mais ouais, du coup je pourrais pas la regarder. Mais je serai bien là pour le Xbox Showcase. Ça c'est sûr, je serai ici. Le PC Gaming Show, je serai là. Le Ubisoft Forward, pas si sûr. C'est 20h. Non, c'est 19h, bah je serai pas là. C'est mort. Je serai pas là, mais ça m'intéresse pas des masses, c'est Ubisoft. Hein. Et le Capcom Showcase, ça dépendra. C'est quelle heure? À quelle heure? C'est de minuit à minuit 45. Il y a les chances que je sois là. Et que du coup, on joue à un jeu avant. Sûrement Batman, je l'espère. Si j'ai réussi à le commencer. Ah, c'est saoul, c'est saoul. Oh la vache, il y a une petite animation là, regardez. Magnifique. Non mais bon. Non mais ouais. Mais là, j'ai été convaincu par tous les jeux. Je suis très content des jeux qui ont été montrés, qui ont pu être vus. C'est très très cool. Donc voilà. Que dire d'autre à part bravo. C'est très très bien. Il en faut des développeurs indés qui soient motivés. Pas par l'argent.